6'7".
guy's 6'7".
Yeah.
Oh wait, he's 6'7".
That's crazy. Because I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like. I'm a big geography guy.
It could be so fun and so like, yee, and then all of a sudden it can be like, man, this is just awful, and it's just the worst feeling in the world.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. This is season 4 of the Southern Ohio Sports Authority flagship podcast show. My name is John Bruce alongside Shayne Combs. This is our second season of Overtime together. This is like our 5th season of doing some sort of show. Going back to the SVC Sports Talk days, if you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go back and listen to those shows. We did a whole lot of those. Those were fun. Maybe a little dated based on the fact that some of the things we talked about, but they were overall a good time, and I'm glad to have you here for a second season of Overtime. I know we saw each other all summer for double overtime, but did you have a good summer?
Oh, outstanding. Anxious to get back at it, and I really enjoyed the double overtime. I'd encourage people to go back and just kind of listen to those a little bit if you enjoy high school sports coaching, things like that, because a lot of them are not really time sensitive. You could listen to them whenever and they would kind of make sense. And I really enjoyed doing that, but as always, ready to gear up for another season.
Yep, and then the thing with the double overtime, we haven't really put a set, hey, this is when we're done with it, because there's still a chance to have different coaches come in throughout the year that, once again, won't be time sensitive, but it will be stuff that we can put out at different times. So look for those throughout the year. It's just, this has been a fun time for SOSA. It's been an interesting time. But as always, we're here inside the Chillicothe Sports Card Studio, inside of SOSA the Dugout in downtown Chillicothe. So with the schools season or tryout season getting ready to start, since your summers are over, make sure you're checking out the dugout to see, get in some times and get a lot of swings in, because it's still a really cool facility over there. And I saw a kid yesterday that, I won't say a name, but he's in here a lot, and I got to see him play in a little bit in the middle school, and you can see the work was working out, and like there's going to be some local schools that are going to be like, man, this kid looks like he's put in a lot of work. It's because he has, and we see him here all the time. So look forward to seeing those kids kind of carry over beyond. We have little leagues, we have adult league people come in as well. So a lot of cool opportunities over there in the dugout. But we also have some cool opportunities over here as well. I know over on that side over there, we watched the Prospect League playoffs over there a few days ago. Me and Kenneth Hay, who's going to be back again this year with us in the fall. Speaking of back here with us again, Carson Francis is going to be back calling a lot of games. Going to be a really fun year. It looks like our streaming crew is kind of the same as it was a year ago, and it felt like that went really well. Brock Netter just sent out a new episode of Bad Company, which I think is going to be rebranded. I gave him some great names, like anything with Brock, and you can just probably guess of like, hey, these are going to be some really quality names. Probably is not going to use any of those, but it's going to be rebranded a little bit because, one of the big pieces of news for us here at SOSA is our Derek Webb is moving, not on, because he's still going to be part of SOSA, but he's going to be moving over to do a little bit more stuff with the Chillicothe Gazette. He sent me some numbers of his first story that he got posted, and they needed someone to be over there to do some of the sports writing, because when I saw what sports draws to their website is huge, and that's something the Chillicothe area has missed for the last few years is a lack of everyday sports writer in the area, and that's going to be huge for our area that we're getting another sports writer.
Yeah, it really is. If you look over the years, it's just, I think that's part of the passion I've always shared. We've done a lot of versions of this. When I think of, over the last 20 years, J.J. Huddle, now I know I'm dating myself, a lot of correspondent work for them in their Ohio magazine and their website, and then as a Southeast correspondent there, I really enjoyed that. And then Derek and I started to get to know each other as he was, with the Gazette, and then he moved out to the Midwest a little bit more, and then he comes back and he does a lot of different things. But he's always had a passion to cover our area. So I just think it makes a lot of sense for him. He's still going to be a part of a lot of different things, which is exciting. But I think we all share the passion of how can we cover kids and how can we get that out there. I know there's always going to be some competitions involved for this or that or whatever, but I honestly think what I love about SOSA is this is a place that really has a passion for doing it for the right reasons.
Yes, and that's, Derek and Brock kind of got that started back in 2018, 2019, and it's just kind of moved on and elevated, and we hope to keep elevating
Derek
it.
spent some time on SVC Sports Talk. I mean, goodness, that was what? Over 300 shows, I think.
Right.
Of SV. He did some work with me there too, so really enjoy Derek and the work he does, and always does a great job covering kids.
Yeah, and he'll do a really good job over with the Chillicothe Gazette, but make sure you keep tuning in. It's going to be some stuff outside of the Chillicothe area that you're going to see more of Derek with, and especially in our postseason coverage and everything. But it's just kind of time for some of our other guys to step up.
It doesn't really change anything from what I'm understanding here on the up front. It doesn't really change anything on SOSA's plan to continue to grow. Just he's going to have a different role and all that, and we wish him the best, and we know he'll still be a part of us in all these different ways that he'll incorporate, as you were describing.
Yeah, one way where we might actually grow is Raymond Cladle is going to be going to Ohio University, and his schedule during the week is going to be pretty busy, so I think we're going to have a little bit more stuff on that side where he's going to be able to get out and do some extra coverage for us over there while still doing the Friday nights and everything. I know he's really excited. Like, he moves in on Thursday of this week, so we're doing this on Wednesday. He's moving in next Thursday, so Thursday the 20th. So when Jackson at Unioto,
it's our opening night.
Yeah, our opening night. He's coming back after he moves in to come shoot that game because that's what he loves to do. So really looking forward to still having him around to get some really quality pictures. But Austin Hanna's going to be with us in the fall. It's just it's going to be kind of the gang's back together, but it's going to be because we've got so much really cool stuff to talk about and to cover. So when we talk about different things that we're covering, what are you most looking forward to this year in your second year here your second full year here with SOSA?
For me, John, this time of year almost is a overall repeat throughout my entire adult life. I love this time of year when you start to go back to school and there's a newness in the air. It's as clean and as organized and as perfect as things are going to get before the chaos starts. But I also welcome back high school sports because I think middle school and high school sports play such a role in the classroom and such a role in the educational process. Look, I love the Cincinnati Reds. I play some fantasy sports every now and then. I watch the college sports. I'm a sports junkie. But there's something about high school sports that just rings a little different for me. And the older I get, that seems to be more. So it could be year 28 for me in education and 30 plus and from the coaching or media standpoint. There's something about the newness of this is somebody's freshman year. This is somebody's senior year. You only get a 4-year window to do this. And I love being a part of trying to promote that, trying to add to the seriousness, to the professionalism, yet keep it very amateur status, and that kids can just really grow from it. Some kids are going to be lucky enough to maybe dip their feet into the college sports scene a little bit. Maybe once a generation, you might get someone going to get paid a little bit more to play. For the most part, this is it, and this is just part of the extension of the classroom where we're educating these kids and doing things. And that's what I love to see the SOSA interviews. I love going out and covering it and trying to give a little bit of promotion, be an ambassador of high school sports, and bring a little media coverage to it and attention and try to grow it. Because I think, again, the more kids that are involved in it, the more kids that are going to get that experience that I'm talking about. But that's where it's at for me. Is this time of year, I get really anxious to get high school sports underway, get back to school, and to kind of start the whole thing again.
Yeah, when we mentioned starting the whole thing again, but we kind of never stopped throughout the summer. So
Fair.
we kept going. We had Horsing Around about the Chillicothe Paints podcast coming on, thankfully presented by Rathkamp Financial, one of our big sponsors that we appreciate everything they do for us here. Then we were able to get down to the Root. That's a really cool,
Great event, great place.
Yeah, great
people.
event. Yes. So check that one out. We've got, I mean, it's a 5-hour stream of some really good volleyball.
Really enjoyed that
with
night.
some coaching interviews on there as well. There's some of that's kind of in the timestamps, which I kind of wanted to get to that. Today's show. This is episode 106, kind of. I don't know how I'm gonna, like, it's definitely 106, but we did the 6 episodes this summer of double overtime, so I want to make sure to keep the.
Well, that's why you make the big bucks.
Yeah.
I'm not smart enough
Yeah.
to know what to number 'em.
Yeah, just the slight numbers. I could just go season 4, episode 1. But,
Yes.
But it will be episode 106 overall. There's timestamps below in the description below. You're going to see timestamps for what we talk about. So if you don't, I mean, we're already past it, but if you don't care about some of the stuff we've already talked about, what we're excited about, if you don't care about that, that's fine. Click on what's below. If you're looking forward to our football kind of preview that we're going to do here in the next few minutes, you can check that out. But if you want to go to, you just care about Division 6 football, it's going to be in there. You can click to Division 6, and that's going to be the timestamp of when we talk about it in the episode. If you want to know about the Libero position in volleyball, well, we're going to talk about it. And, we're going to talk about it throughout. And then you can just click on that timestamp below. So if you see me looking at my phone, I am, because I'm trying to timestamp it up.
What's so great about that too, John, is I've had so much feedback on that where people really enjoy that, where they can go and they say, well, I listened to this part, I still want to listen to this part, and I also want to thank, we have a lot of people from different schools that they're getting right out in front of it, and they're helping push to their school. Like, they're talking about our kids here in this section. So thank you to them for that. But the timestamps are great because we've always said we're going to get on here and cover everything and everybody, or as much as we can, and then let the timestamps kind of let people go out and get what they need from it.
Yeah, because it's also when they say, maybe you don't care about this. Well, maybe it's not that you don't care. Maybe it's you're driving somewhere and you can just, I'm going to just throw this on, as I'm driving, and that way you don't have to click around.
Yeah.
We want people to be safe. So you can just kind of click to that next part. You can hear that, and if you want to go back and listen, we appreciate it. But if not, we also understand. So, it's going to be a really exciting year for us, where we have some different things, different ideas that we're looking at streaming-wise. We may be doing a track meet in the spring. That's way, way down the line. But we've already got some soccer planned, which is something we've only done a couple of different times. Going to see how that goes, and, we'll kind of see from there. But a lot of volleyball and football in the fall. We're going to start off on Thursday, Jackson at Unioto. That's going to be the first football game that we're going to be streaming. You and Carson are going to have that call. And then on that Friday, we're going to have Logan Elm at Zane Trace. That'll be our first Kingston National Bank game of the week. We'll talk about those and much more in football, but then we will be announcing throughout the year when our volleyball coverages are going to be. You're going to see that every time here on Overtime. So if you haven't been a part of what we do on Overtime, so the newness of it, maybe you're new to the area, maybe you have a child that's new to varsity, we're going to talk about a lot. We cover the entire Southeast District, which is now bigger, which is 73 different schools in our area, so we cover in some way. So if we miss someone one week, there's a pretty good reason why. And we'll have the Haynes-Stoll Healthcare Coaches Call-In Show. That will be on Sunday nights in the fall, so keep tabs on that. That should be about a 7 o'clock start, because that's right in between the end of Sunday, or right before Sunday Night Football starts, so you can get a little extra in there. But we're not only going to be talking to football coaches this year, we're going to talk to volleyball, soccer, maybe we go some of the other fall sports as well, because there's 800 fall sports, so it's just really, really exciting for this fall.
Oh, it's It's incredible. Can't wait to get going and look forward to covering it all.
Yeah, and then speaking of covering it all, we got to start with the big one, the big boy, which is football on the gridiron. As we said, we're filming this on a Wednesday. This is going out on Monday. Our season starts on Thursday. So it used to be you got the 2 or 3 scrimmages, then it was 2 scrimmages and a jamboree game. Are people still doing the jamboree game? I don't even know.
Well, like this
Yeah.
this Friday night, again, this is Wednesday, so meaning
Yeah.
like basically week 0, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? I think you still have that option.
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody calls it that or does that. I mean, you have the right to do probably the scrimmage as well. I know that I'm hoping to get out this Friday night and get some prep work in and so forth for our busy week. As you
Yeah.
said, we got the doubleheader to kick it off there Thursday, Friday in week 1. Can't wait.
Yeah, it should be really exciting. We may have something on Saturday. That would be volleyball if we do, but we'll kind of see. Also, there's it's going to be really exciting this fall because you graduated some really good teams. You had a lot of really good seniors across our area. I mean, Jackson, Unioto, Eastern Pike had some outstanding senior classes. Wheelersburg, obviously, they get to the state championship game last year in Division 5. But you also have some unbelievable players coming up. Carte Ligon from Chillicothe is one of the most dynamic athletes that we've ever had in the District. Julian Baker from Miami Trace. Just one of the top running backs in the area as well. You've got, Chillicothe's got a couple of big-time linemen. Sounds like we're going to be talking a lot of Chillicothe here throughout the season. But they're not the only ones. If you look through, we're going to go kind of division by division, but you still got some really talented kids coming back throughout the area. No, Nelsonville lost a lot. Zane Trace now in Division 6. Is this a time for them to kind of take advantage of going down in Division 6? But then at the same time, they're in that kind of going up to the northwest area in their region. Ironton is back. We're going to see how they do, and kind of, if you've ever had a team that's going to have like a revenge tour in high school, I would say Ironton's probably going to be that one, but they're going to be playing a lot of teams outside the area. So we'll talk about that throughout. This is going to be one of the best McClain teams in a long time. New Lexington went 11-2 last year. Was unbelievable. Can they carry on? They're a team that we've covered here and there. Looks like Washington's going to be really impressive. Circleville. I'm excited to see how Coach Sherritt does in that week 1 against Chillicothe. And then you move down even into Division 7. Symmes Valley was really good last year. They weren't good enough to slow down Eastern Pike. How's their defense this year? We know that offensively they're going to be really fun. But overall, just going to be a really fun area. Maybe the best Huntington team ever as well when you're in Division 6.
Certainly since the mid-'80s, probably.
Yeah. So, it's going to be a really fun football season. What are you looking forward to most this season?
I think for me, this time of year, we all are in the same spot. We know the names coming back. You rattled off some of them there, which are correct. But you're seeking for all these questions of, okay, what about the depth pieces? What about the scheduling? Who's healthy? Who's hurt? Like, I always say when we come on the air, like, we don't get injury reports like you do at the higher level. So a lot of times we're trying to figure out certain things with you, and week by week we go. So the football preview is one of the hardest to do because there's so many moving parts to what makes this all go. Who's experienced up front? A lot of times those guys don't get a lot of the credit. They can fly under the radar. You mentioned Carte Ligon. I think with Chillicothe, being around that program a couple years ago, I said at that time, I think I said it on here, it's a good time to buy stock in Chillicothe athletics. And I think you're seeing that in terms of as they get older. Because, John, wouldn't you agree that football still comes down to 17, 18 years old? It is so difficult. I'm not saying an athletic 15, 16-year-old can't come on and impact it, right? The quickness, the athleticism, the skill set, things like that. But when you get into the trenches, especially when you get on the defensive side of the ball, and you're trying to get the Bryce Johnsons of the world, the Carte Ligons of the world, the Julian Bakers of the world on the ground 25, 30 times a night, to me, there's got to be a little bit of age, a little bit of physicality there in terms of 7, 8, 9, 10 different guys on the defensive side of the ball that can make a tackle, right? A couple guys there in the middle that can win or at least compete at the line of scrimmage. So I think those are the things that I'm looking at as I get into the scrimmages. It's hard sometimes. I'm watching these scrimmages in person or on film, and halftime they're not even wearing their uniforms, and you kind of know the personnel a little bit. But more so, I love it because the coach in me, more than paying attention to who the Jimmies and the Joes are just yet, you're just kind of watching for concepts, and you'll watch, and I'll be like I watched the scrimmage the other night, and I was like, that team right there is winning the line of scrimmage almost on every snap. You know what I mean? And that jumps out at you. So I think that's what's intriguing right now. Now, as we move closer to week 1, we'll get a little bit more in depth in our coverage of those teams. And then by the time you and I are sitting here in week 2 or 3, we'll be able to put names and faces with it a little bit more. But right now, I love evaluating the depth and the age and the roster sizes and some of the things that because it's coming, injuries and adversity and things like that when it comes to football.
Yeah, it's I know there's been some injuries in week, what is it, -2 in the preseason. Like you're dealing with injuries. You're dealing with injuries from the summer. You're dealing with injuries from the spring, or maybe from last season as well. So you never know. You don't know how people are going to react. You don't know how people. Sometimes you've got a kid that maybe you're really excited. They're out for the first time, and then they get hit and they don't want any part of that because you still have to deal with that part of it. You've got a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of transfers going on. So how are they going to mix in with the new teams? How are the new teams going to use them? How are the old teams going to fill those spots? You just never know, and that's part of the fun of football is you don't really know until you get to weeks 2 or 3. So we're going to go a much more in-depth football preview once we get closer to the
that's interesting because once upon a time you used to feel like week 1 or 2 is about as healthy as a football team's going to be, but and again, we can't thank our sponsorship enough for allowing double overtime to carry through the summer, as well as obviously the SOSA overtime every week for 30 weeks almost.
Right.
I got thinking about this on the drive in this morning. Remember we talked to Tony Williams about the schedule and the overlap and the OHSA, the way things are moving around. Some of these kids go to the state track meet. And then they come back, and their basketball coach is already 2 weeks in. Well, then it carries over into summer. Now football's starting. Like, you roll that over and roll that over and roll that over, you're right. There's a lot of nagging injuries I've heard from coaches. Well, this was bothering them during track, or this was bothering them at the end of baseball. They're kind of nursing this a little bit, or going in. These 2 and 3 sport athletes, by the time they get in their junior, senior year, they're into sports, 10, 11, 12. Right. That starts to wear on the body. So that is an interesting point just to see. You hope week 1 is as healthy as you'll ever be, but that may not be the case for some teams.
Yeah, and it's just, it's something we're going to have to keep track of throughout the year, and hopefully we don't have to talk too much injuries throughout the year because you want, like you said earlier on, you get 4 chances to do this. So you want everyone to be as healthy as possible for each one of those 4 chances.
And bigger leagues will start by about week 4. Some of the smaller leagues, when I say smaller, less teams, by about week 6. I think everybody's in the league play by about week 6.
Yes.
So, I don't know. Maybe if it's a situation where it's kind of the wait and see. Who comes out of those situations the healthiest could really impact some of these conference races as well.
Yeah, then we'll start. We're going to talk a little bit about some big games to look for this week as far as different divisions go, and then we'll kind of go into a little bit more of what we're looking forward to. But let's go to Division 3 first. This is kind of the way we do it. We go in order. We're not going to bounce around to different divisions, but we're going to start in Division 3. Let's start with that Thursday night game. Jackson at Unioto. That's going to be our first streaming game of this season. Jackson went 9-3 last year, graduated an outstanding senior class. They still got some really talented pieces. Unioto went 11-1 last year, their best season ever. graduated a ton of really talented kids, but they've still got some really nice pieces coming back. What are you looking forward to most for that game on Thursday night?
Well, I think it's just that. I think these two schools getting together. It's ironic that it's this year because, when you think of the seniors that represented both of those programs last year, I think both those coaching staffs would tell you what an incredible impact they had on the history of the programs. Obviously, with the Jackson history, it goes a little deeper. Unioto's history a little bit more scattered, and then coming on here in more recent history. But make no mistake about it, I think what establishes you as a program that's moving into that level is your ability to roll it over and reload. So this is the type of week one game where you immediately need people in their first, I won't say first Friday night, because they probably played a lesser role last year. Special teams, second unit, fill in maybe on the defensive line here, maybe an offensive depth piece. You see what I'm saying? But like now it's more of a starter, both sides of the ball, here we go. And it's one of those things where you're going to have some first-year varsity guys impact this game on both sides, both teams. And that's what excites me, is I think some of the main players, some of the main characters. I think Jackson probably returns just a little bit more of an advantage in the trenches. I think Unioto has some really exciting skill kids that are young, but they're going to be dynamic with the ball in space. They remind me, ironically, a little bit of that Jackson group that just graduated. They remind me a little bit of them if you rewind about 3 years ago and you watch them come onto the scene. I don't know, maybe I'm stretching there a little bit for the Jackson Unioto analogy, but like those are some of the things early on I get. Now I'll get more into the preparation as I see these teams this weekend as they start to get closer to the real thing, but those are some of my early things that I'm looking for.
As soon as you said that in my mind, I just thought Blake Braden and his physical comparison to Bodie Wolford. And I'm like, those two are like almost the same body type, body build and everything. I'm like, well.
Like the Harsha kid in space when you think of some of the unique skill kids that Jackson just graduated.
Yeah, I like that comparison. And it's one historically proud program, and then a program that is very proud of what they've been the last few years, up and coming as well. This is really exciting chance for Unioto against the best program that they've played in the regular season, really historically going back to the late 90s whenever they were playing Newark Catholic.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's just because it's, for a long time, it was not a program that was very good. And now it's on its, I assume they still believe it's still on the ascent, and going to be a really exciting game on Thursday night. I'm guessing we'll have a pretty big crowd watching us on that evening, but also a pretty big crowd going to be there in Frenchtown on Thursday night, so looking forward to that. A game that we picked last year to start, or the last 2 years, has started off on our Friday nights, because we've started on Thursdays and then we've gone to Fridays. We're not going to be at this game this year, but Waverly at Miami Trace. This Miami Trace team, they graduated a lot. Obviously with Guthrie, you graduate a good bit, but man, you got Julian Baker, you've got Phipps, you've got some really nice pieces coming back for that Miami Trace team. And this Waverly team, nowhere near as bad as their record was last year, dealt with a whole lot of adversity. They're going to be much improved as well.
Yeah, what happened? I'll start with Waverly. What happened with Waverly, in my opinion, you're right. They were not 1-9 bad. Yeah. They played an incredibly tough schedule, as they're doing again this year, and some of those teams were really, really old and really, really good, and they kind of ended up taking it on the chin earlier. Well, then what happened was they got beat up a little bit. We talked about injuries and got into the part of the schedule where you think you'd match up a little bit. And again, I'm not here to make excuses for you. I'm just here to analyze what happened. And they kind of got themselves into a position where they became a little bit more beatable. They lost some confidence, and before you know it, it snowballs and it goes the wrong way. Now you come back this year, you are a year older. You have some different things back. There seems to be an excitement and the ability to make some plays early on. I'm seeing some of the feedback I'm getting is they think they can be a little bit more explosive on the offensive side, hit the home run a little bit more. But you're still playing that same schedule. You're still playing that tough schedule, and that's not going to be any easier. So how they handle some of that on the scoreboard, how they handle that in terms of health, how they handle that in terms of the response. If you do get off to the tough start again, what can you learn from last year to kind of rebound and go through the whole year? Now, over on the Miami Trace side, the Baker kid's so good. Then what happens with Phipps at the quarterback position, I'm so impressed with his ball handling. I think a lot of times when you're doing some of the read options and the different things, the ability to handle the ball cleanly, to show it on the inside handoffs, to pull it back, to make the accurate pitches, the different things. And then he's such a dynamic runner. So it keeps you honest there a little bit. And then as we watched in our coverage last year, they may not throw it a bunch, but because they just absolutely force you into the box on so many overloads, when they do decide to pull it back and throw it, it's usually in a big play variety. So big task for Waverly there on opening night. Obviously, Miami Trace, high expectations when you think of an elite talent like Baker leading the way. But again, their depth up front, obviously Guthrie, rightfully so, got a lot of publicity and credit last year. But there were some buddies he had up there across the front that could open some holes. I think Baker would be the first to tell you that he can turn the 5-yard run into the 50, but there's always a good hole there that is waiting for him.
Yeah, he's so dynamic when he gets in space, and he's big enough, strong enough, and tough enough to break a lot of tackles. But if you are getting 3, 4, 5 yards before you're getting touched, then he's so much more dynamic, and that's what that offensive line has been able to do for them. They went 10-2 last year. This was a game that was a 3-score game last year, but it was a close game throughout. And just Miami Trace pulls away late, but this should be a really fun game on Friday night. And then the one I'm really looking forward to is we've heard a lot about this Chillicothe team, rightfully so. They've really talented team coming off a 6-5 season last year, but then Circleville 8-4 a year ago, won their first ever playoff game and home playoff game. Coach Jay Sheridan in his second year, they lost a lot. They graduated a whole lot. Obviously, a really talented Circleville group across the sporting landscape. An outstanding year for Circleville on the boys and girls side. But this is a game where Circleville, maybe this is when they're at their best, would be you've got a ton of time to prep. You've got a 2-time state championship coach and Coach Jay Sheridan getting prepped for how to try to slow down Ligon and the Cavaliers. I think this is the best chance. Like I feel like if this was a week 3 game, maybe this is, where, I don't know. It's just, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Circleville is able to draw up game plan wise and how Chillicothe is able to counter it, because we know athletically and talent-wise, they are absolutely loaded. They're doing some different things at the quarterback position this year. It's just, I really look forward to seeing how this game plays out, because I think it's going to really show what this Chillicothe team is going to do through weeks 1 through 10, or weeks 2 through 10 after this week. But then also what they could do in the playoffs as well.
That's an interesting take. I'll be honest. I went the other way. That's why I love doing this show with you. The point you make about having all that time to prepare is a really, really good one. It's a unique one. My mind kind of went with, the coaching staff when you talked about, you and I started talking off air last year about week 4 or 5, and then we started bringing it on air more as the year went on, about how you could see it in the Circleville culture, and you could see it in the Circleville physicality and the brand of football they were playing. And I think the point we were making off air first, driving home from games on a Friday night or whatever, is like, look, Circleville's never lacked athletes walking up and down their hallway. It's been, for whatever reason, a consistency of what sport do they get into, what do they play, and so forth. But I think we're starting to see now the ability to have some of that depth. going back to what I said earlier, if you're going to try to get a Carte Ligon to the ground 25, 30 times a night, you're going to have 11 guys on the field that are physical enough to make a defensive play. There's just, you see what I'm saying? It's not like you're going to go out with 2 or 3 guys and have 18 tackles. I mean, you're going to have to play assignment football, and you're going to have to be able to overload, and you're going to have to be able to get him on the ground. I think the biggest thing with a Ligon, we talked about Baker a second ago, is you got to take away the home run. Even if they're coming at you 9, 10 yards a pop, I know that's frustrating, and I know it looks like it's a formula for disaster, but in high school football, you can still get to the hold. You can still get to the false start. You can still get to the, you force a high school unit to go 10, 11 play drive, there's some mistakes in there. There's no defense for Carte Ligon through the hole out into space and he's gone. You know what I mean? That's what's going to beat you in a hurry. So that's what I'll be looking for when we call Chillicothe and Miami Trace games and things like that. The Circleville defense, I agree with you. That'll be a great matchup to see, can they just contain him? Because, again, containing him might be 20 carries for 200 yards. Like, that might be containing him. I know it sounds funny, but, like, you know, if you're not careful, it can really get away from you.
But also, if you look at their last game last year, which was going to Indian Valley with an elite all-time running back, and then now you get to start the next year with Ligon, it's like, that's not a fun combination at all. But this is if there's a group that's going to be ready, it would be that one. But this Chillicothe team, it's really exciting. The community is really looking forward to what they can do. They've got a schedule that I feel like they can manage and get through and get them throughout the season. I think it plays like their biggest games are all at home. I think it just works out really perfectly for them this season, for them to have that big time year. There's going to be a big target for them because of, how talented they are. But I think Coach Carper's going to have his group ready. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this team does throughout the season.
Yeah, no question. I think he picked some really good ones there in that D3 coverage.
Yeah, and then obviously there's going to be a lot more games throughout the D3 area, but we'll talk more about them next week as well. So let's move over to Division 4. Division 4, we kind of mentioned that with Circleville as well in there. So, that's going to be where some of these areas will look a little like we're talking about them a little bit less. But we talked about Circleville, which is going to be one of the better Division 4 teams in our area this year in that grouping right there. But then let's go to McClain. McClain at Adena. Last year, I think we didn't really know what to expect because, this is a McClain program that's been down for a long time, but they'd also graduated some really talented kids the year before. We didn't realize how good that sophomore group was last year. Now juniors, they started with a 20-0 win last year against Adena at home. Really looking forward to seeing how this group continues to grow.
Yeah, going all the way back to when this group was in junior high, there's a lot of people at McClain that were high on them in a lot of different sports. We highlighted some of these athletes in the spring coverage as well on the baseball diamond, and they're coming in, and I think what happens sometimes is on the baseball diamond or even the basketball court for that matter, you can impact just a little bit earlier. But like if you do not have that junior, senior help, you'll hear me say that quite a few times tonight. If you're going to feel it a little bit, especially up front, especially when you're playing in the FAC. So this is an opportunity for McClain up front and some of the non-league to maybe develop some 3-7 a year ago.
3-7, yeah.
So these are, it's unfair to call must-wins when they're non-league games. But for what they're wanting to accomplish, these are some games up front early in the season that they really got to be able to get.
Yeah, and they were a team last year. Hudson Lovett had a really nice year overall. He was right around 2,300 all-purpose yards between passing and rushing. They've got some really talented kids coming back, but Lovett is kind of the centerpiece of that. For Adena, you've got a kid like Fisher Schaff, who's I would guess would be watching Lovett throughout the matchup because he's a He's a ball hawk, really good athlete, and can kind of cover the entire field. Adena's got a really nice staff as well. This should be a good opportunity for them to continue to grow.
Yeah, I agree. I like the Adena core and what they have. This has always been a pretty good rivalry game. I'm sure it's well attended. But I think athletically, this is going to be quite a challenge for Adena as some of these McClain kids get a little older, and we'll start to see how they match up there, particularly at a couple of the skill positions.
Let's stay in the FAC then and move over to Washington at Mechanicsburg. This is a game last year. Mechanicsburg goes 8-3. They win it 28-6, but this was a game that was 7-6 going into the fourth quarter, and Mechanicsburg kind of pours it on at the end. Washington goes 6-6. Sam Pfeiffer, another really good young quarterback, had a great season for them. He threw for 2,671 yards last year, 33 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, an outstanding sophomore year for him. This Washington team, I think that they're really excited about the growth of that junior class as well.
Yeah, I do. As you were rattling some of that stuff off, and I pulled their schedule up here, it reminds me a little bit of Waverly we talked about. Again, maybe some of these analogies are stretches, but you have a core group. They're getting older. They're extremely athletic. They have the ability to hit the home run on every snap. But, man, look at the schedule they play. I mean, when you rattle up Mechanicsburg, Circleville, Thurgood Marshall, Heat, like it's a situation where, and that's what the FAC weighting is. You can go through a tough start and not be that bad a football team. And I think that's what you were saying about Waverly earlier. I'd say about Courthouse here. You'd like to see Courthouse be able to maybe get one of these early on just to develop a little confidence, because I look at that and I don't know if they're going to be favored very many times throughout their schedule, but they're a pretty good football team. I don't think it's an indication of just how good they are in terms of, especially at the skill positions.
Yeah, I mean, they shocked Granville last year, and that was that was the one that kind of opened all of our eyes. So then it gets to, you get back down in the league play, lose a tight one to the Chillicothe, and then the games weren't nearly as close with Jackson and Miami Trace, but they go out and win a playoff game over New Richmond. And just an outstanding group. You've got Sam Pfeiffer and then Aiden Osborne, who had almost 1,200 yards receiving last year. So you have a really nice 1-2 punch there. And this is an offense that knows how to get the ball out and get it to athletes in a hurry.
And that might be a way to offset some of the trenches, especially against some of these higher level opponents. If they can be creative in their play design, get the ball out in space, as you said. That's a young man, the Osborne kid, that every time he touches it, he's a threat to go. So, it's going to be interesting to see. The only thing that jumped out at me was the schedule there, and it'll just be interesting to see how they kind of handle some of the adversity that might come their way early on.
And then another team that had a nice year last year was Fairfield Union. They went 7-5. They go on the road to start the year at New Lexington last year, who went 11-2, and then at Colonel Crawford, and we're fairly competitive in both of those. Colonel Crawford went 13-2 last year, so I mean, anytime you lose to someone that loses in the Final Four is not necessarily a bad thing, but they still have to host New Lexington. New Lexington still returns some really talented players from a really good team from a year ago.
Yeah, you and I both really, really enjoyed the New Lexington community. We got a chance to see them in volleyball a little bit and then in football a little bit. Really good people, really good to us. Had some nice things to say about SOSA. We appreciate that because we appreciated getting to cover their kids. You're right. They're going to present quite a challenge there. And look, these early games, you talk about measuring sticks. It lets you know right away you're not going to accidentally do something in week one. If you go out and you do something pretty well, you're going to be able to believe in it because of who you're doing it against. And at the same time, if it goes the wrong way, you're going to get exposed and you're going to be able to learn from it. They always talk about that big gap, that big learning curve from week one to week two. Playing teams like this in week one certainly will showcase that in a hurry.
Yeah. Definitely gets you ready throughout the season. And then let's go to Division 5. Let's start with Wheelersburg because this is going to be a matchup between two area teams. Wheelersburg 14-1 last year, losing the state championship game. Portsmouth last year 7-5. I think 8-4 on the official records, but 7-5 overall on the season. And they win another playoff game because that's kind of what they've been able to do now. They have a new coach. Graduated some really talented pieces, but they still have some really nice pieces coming back. Fernando Pachis is really good.
Really good.
This Wheelersburg team, they graduated a ton, but this is a big first opening week matchup for both teams. Portsmouth, new staff, trying to figure out some new things. Wheelersburg trying to figure out some new things on, like, who's that next man up? Jack Dorr had got some experience at the QB position at different times last year. Who's he going to get the ball to? I'm just really looking forward to seeing how this game plays out on Friday night.
Well, you said it with Jackson earlier. It's like, okay, who's next? I mean, it's not. There's no time to rebuild it. You reload it. Wheelersburg's going to fall into that, right? We're going to figure out real quick here in the first 2 or 3 weeks, like, oh, wait a minute, here's a new one. Here's a new star. On the Portsmouth side, that's a fascinating scene. We had them on opening night last year, and I'll grant you, obviously, Unioto ended up being really, really good, which we knew they would be.
Yeah.
But, like, give Portsmouth a lot of credit the way they stayed the course and how much better they got throughout the year. On that opening night, there were so many things they just did to themselves. They couldn't snap the football. They couldn't just do some basic things. So for them to stay the course and continue to get better throughout says a lot about some of those kids. So I'm anxious to see. Obviously, they're going to have their hands full here in this week 1 matchup, but I think you can call upon last year's experience to know that no matter what happens in week 1, pay attention to this group in terms of what they look like, say, in week 3, week 6, and so on, because I think they're going. As far as Wheelersburg, now we're going to have them early in our stream schedule, week 2. So they're going to be exciting to follow because we see some familiar faces coming. But like I'm telling you, just wait and see. There's going to be a couple breakout stars the way it works in these programs that are going to be fun to follow.
Yeah, when you're waiting your turn and then you get that turn, you make the most of that opportunity, and that's what Wheelersburg typically does. They're going to start their season at Ed Miller Stadium at the Pirate Ship on Friday night. That one should be a really fun matchup inside a county. And then Ironton, 9-1 last year. You know the controversy there, where they were not involved in the postseason. They will go to Williamsburg, who went 10-1 last year. They were the 1 seed. They lost their opening round matchup in the playoffs, but this is typically a really strong program and a really good chance for this Ironton team. They're talented. They've got some really nice young pieces. You heard about Edwards for years, and now he's moving out to the wide receiver, more of a slot role for them. They're going to try to get him the ball in a little bit more space. It's going to be exciting just to see the pieces that Ironton puts out there.
Couple of different things in my notes on this one. One, I love the schedule by Williamsburg here because this is a team that no matter what happens in week 1, I think they're going to have the ability to rattle off some wins. I think they felt like, okay, we had the regular season last year. The postseason didn't go the way we go, so here they come. So they're going Ironton. Now, obviously, we're here to talk more about Ironton. I want to get your take on this. I think in sports sometimes, because there's so much media coverage, there's going to be a lot of narrative of revenge tour and this or that. And I'm not saying they won't use it as a battle cry every now and then, but when you have a standard of Ironton, don't you think that that's kind of a little bit of just that kind of like media headline out there? And again, I'm not saying it won't be mentioned but you see where I'm going with that? Don't you think with Ironton, this is more about, hey, here's our standard, let's live up to it, and everything else will take care of itself? What's your take on that?
Yeah, because they're gonna go out and it's a new team. It's a completely new team. You've got new pieces. You still have the same coaching staff, and you've got people that are in the maybe where you're moving, Caden Edwards out wide a little bit. So it's even more of a different team than it was last year. You're going to be starting a sophomore in Wyatt Wolf at the quarterback position. You're still playing for Ironton. You're still playing for that community. That's what they're playing for. They're playing, as you said, the standard. The standard's the standards. The standard is the standard. You're trying to hang another banner up at the tank. That's what they're playing for. If they can go make an impact on their way, they're going to do that. But they're playing a completely different schedule as well. So, I mean, it's going to be really exciting to see how they carry themselves throughout this season. Talking to those kids, like in basketball, there's some really good kids too. So, I mean, it's just, but you see them walking around like in the corridors of the convo, and you're like, I get it. Like, I can see why this kid could play.
Yeah.
It's just it's a team that I really look forward to seeing this year.
No, I do too, and I look at their schedule. It's got a little bit of local flavor mixed in with some of the the stretching it out over the national scene as well, which I get in that program why you want to do that. But no, I'm just intrigued by Ironton coming back, because I think a lot of times I hear that stuff in sports, and again, I've coached long enough. I've been in the media long enough, so I get both sides of it. But sometimes I think once you tee it up on Friday night and you start playing or whatever, I think it's more about the standard. That would be something in the focus of this Ironton group that I'm anxious to watch, starting there with a good Williamsburg opponent in week 1.
Well, and it feels like a couple years ago, I know week 8 they're at Harvest Prep. Like when they played Harvest Prep a couple years ago, it felt like Harvest Prep was almost in that revenge tour mode. And there were like 40 penalties in the game. Like once they got down, it was like they didn't handle it very well. And Ironton did. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to have your focus and your intensity be on the right thing, which I think they will this year as well. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be a really fun schedule for them. A good one to start off with at Williamsburg, as well as to get on the road as well to start, because just looking at their schedule, that's very impressive.
At Jackson, week 5.
Yeah. It's impressive to me that they were split it 5-5. You've got the 5 home and 5 road. Looking, man, this is gonna be a really fun group to follow. So let's go to Division 6. In Division 6, we've got this. This might be our most open division. Let's start with Huntington. Huntington went 6-4 last year, just missed the playoffs. Maybe for their benefit that they didn't have to go to Coldwater in week 11 with that Coldwater team making it to the Final Four. But they go at Newark Catholic. Newark Catholic went 2-8 last year, but their 2-8 is a different 2-8 than other 2-8s are. Yeah. This is going to be a really good test for this Huntington team. I know they're really excited. They've upped their non-conference schedule. This one's got, I think it's going to really tell you what you're going to need to know about Huntington this year.
I would agree. The schedule's really interesting there. You follow up at home with Byrne Union and a Portsmouth West team that we've known over the years to be really, really good program. So it does. It goes a lot, and then even when you open SVC play, I think we'll be over at Zane Trace. We announced on our stream schedule there, and in the SVC opener there. So these first 4 weeks are an incredible mini gauntlet for this Huntington program. They've been building up for this season, led by the outstanding quarterback play of Hirsch, now into his final season, and I could see why they want to do this. I could see why they feel like now's the time to push it just a little bit in the scheduling. As you said, Newark Catholic, no matter what the record is, you kind of know what you're getting there when you go into week 1. And be on the road. It'll be a great test for them, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond. Now, in studying them a little bit, I worry about depth a little bit. So I always talk about how do you come out physically in these first 3 to 4 weeks. That might be something to keep an eye on as you get down in the Division 6 and Division 7 football. There's not always a next man up, depending on who gets hurt. So that's something to look at. But yeah, I could see why this Huntington group's really excited for this opportunity.
Yeah, it should be a really fun chance for them to go over to Newark Catholic and kind of test themselves against one of the better private school programs in kind of our area, like our section of the state. As a whole. So let's stay in the SVC. You've got Zane Trace opening up against Logan Elm. Zane Trace didn't have a ton of depth last year, but man, that was one of the most exciting defenses that I've seen in a long time. The game against Valley in the playoffs, I felt bad for Valley in that one, but it just felt like it just kept being, pick six, blocked field goal, return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
They can make so many different things happen defensively because they're athletes. How are they going to be offensively? Are they going to be very one-dimensional, or are they going to be able to make it to where, even if they are one-dimensional, have fun stopping that one dimension?
Yeah, I think sometimes we talk about it, and I talk to a lot of football coaches about this very thing. We talk about, okay, well, you'd love to be balanced, but are you balanced for the sake of being balanced, or are you balanced to keep someone off? A lot of times, I've enjoyed one time talking to Tyler Gallion about this, the great coach down at Piketon, and he was talking to me about how, like, well, you might get someone who runs the ball 90% of the time, but do they run out of different formations? Do they run off of different, do they have different ball carriers? Do they have this? And it really kind of opened my eyes a little bit to what he's talking about. There's different ways to be balanced, or there's different ways to keep a defense off balance. And I think with Zane Trace, you got to be able to dive into who you are. I think sometimes when you force feed the other dimension and you just try to say, okay, we're going to throw it 15 times just to be balanced. Well, that's 15 times that you might have went away from your strength. Did you go with a purpose? Why did you do that? That type of thing. So I think what I would look for here is a team that is going to run the ball and play incredible defense. And I think they'll be very opportunistic in the pass game because of those athletes you're talking about. But I think their ability to reload in the trenches and get Johnson and company downhill, that's going to be really, really important. But special teams and defense certainly was a calling card for them late in the season last year, and let's see if they can carry that momentum over.
Yeah, it's a team that was really exciting, and we'll see if they can, as you said, carry that over. They've got some ball hawks and just some different dudes that can do some different things, and Brower are one of the best two-way linemen in our area as well. So
they've almost always been good in the kicking game too, so I don't see why that wouldn't continue.
Right, and let's look to another one, a game that the last couple of years has been absolutely fantastic, which is Portsmouth West at Fairland to open the season. Now, I guess 2 years ago was not as fantastic, but if you go back, just going back the last few years, let's go 2021, Fairland wins 28-27. 2022, Fairland wins 14-13. 2023, Fairland wins 32-29. They win pretty handily in 2024, and then last season West finally got them, but it was 30-27. This has been an outstanding Week 1 game going back the last 5 years, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be again this year. This is a really exciting West team coming, but man, Fairland really comes out of the gates ready more times than not.
Yeah, you always love seeing these matchups that get repeated over and over and over. Two schools find that perfect matchup that makes it kind of a fair matchup year in, year out. Your programs are similar, and what better thing to do than to play a barn burner in Week 1, because it puts you in every situation. We talk about the film study between Week 1 and Week 2, and you get that, and you get into some pressure situations, and ready or not, you better be able to execute some time and score things. There's a term we don't talk about in football nearly enough, being able to execute some of those things. And I know because of some of those instant classic finishes, a lot of that stuff comes into play for sure.
Yeah, and that's what could make that really exciting. I look forward to seeing how Bishop does this year for West, and just overall, just to see their program growth. I think we're going to see them. We announced in Week 5, but we're going to get down and see them in person before that. That one should be a really fun one to start things off with, and then we'll go to another really fun rivalry in the Southeast, which is going to be Trimble at Nelsonville this year. Nelsonville went 12-1 last year. Coach Rusty Richards does an outstanding job there with his Buckeyes. Last year, this game wasn't as tight. A 34-8 win for Nelsonville, but they were one of those teams that was absolutely loaded with that really good upperclassman, heavy team. Man, this has the makings to be kind of a classic as well, because seems like over the last few years, this has been a really tight game. Trimble went 7-5 last year, and I know they're working in a new coach, but still a really, really good program.
Yeah, I think Nelsonville is one of those programs where you understand when it's your turn to come up next, that you understand the bullseye that you're going to wear just because of who you play for, right? In terms of what that program's accomplished. And it's been remarkable to think about their ability to go up against schools much bigger than them and be as successful as they have been. You know, now you come back this year and, you know, roster size is always a concern. Injury is always a concern. You play a little bit of a rivalry game, and, you know, if you're a Trimble, what a great opportunity on this stage, because win or lose, you still got a whole season in front of you where you can go accomplish some things you want to accomplish. So I think it's a kind of a carefree, throw it out there, see what happens type of game for Trimble. And I think sometimes that makes for a really dangerous week one opponent.
Yeah, you got Terry Holbert coming in from Logan Elm, a Trimble alum, taking over for Phil Ferris, who's one of the best coaches one of the best coaches to ever do it in multiple sports here in the Southeast. But Coach Holbert, a really good coach as well. So looking forward to that one.
Bring a lot of structure, a lot of physicality to the program there, in terms of just knowing him over the years and listening to him talk and following his coaching. It'll be a real structured, real physical group that he'll try to establish in that culture.
And then, you know, this was a game that wasn't close last year, but it will be at Vinton County this year. They went 3-7 last year. Waterford had a really nice season a year ago. They go 9-3, make it to the second round of the playoffs, lose a really tight game to Danville. Coach McCutcheon does a really nice job with Waterford. They have to be one of the favorites in the TVC Hawking. It's a really dynamic conference once again this year. Look forward to this Waterford team.
Yeah, Vinton County dropping to 5 now in division there. But you're right, Waterford. The TVC Hawking, just we talk about it in all the sports. It's just kind of sneaky good, you know what I mean? And it's not going to happen with a lot of enrollment. It's not going to happen with huge roster size. They're very efficient in what they do. They play good physicality in the trenches. They can usually run the football pretty well. They're going to defend. They're usually, for small school football too, you'll see some sneaky special teams and kicking games sneak in there a lot of times. So good opportunity for them playing the bigger school, Vinton County, here early on. But again, the Vinton County dropping to 5 there caught my attention in that matchup.
Yeah, it's something that really stands out when you're seeing the way schools are moving school size or enrollment size, as well as something that I'm sure we'll talk about throughout the school year. But let's finish up our football talk in Division 7. We've got some really dynamic teams in Division 7 this year. Eastern Pike has dropped down to Division 7. They've got that long regular season winning streak going. They will host South Point to open up their season.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's a I said it with the Nelsonville program, right? It's kind of the same way here. Now that they've accomplished what they've accomplished for 5 to 10 years, it becomes a expectation of, okay, if you're next, here's the expectation. You're going to wear this bullseye. We're going to be the team to beat just because of who we are. And you're going to have to come in, and there can't be an entitlement. It has to be something you go and earn and respect that bullseye and prepare properly. And everything that we have heard about the Eastern Athletic Program, we've had some double overtime feedback there and so forth. It's something that those kids are up for.
Yeah, this was a game last year at South Point. It was a 13-6 game. Eastern didn't get off to a super quick start, but they played a really nice non-league schedule then. Won 3 one-score games in the first 3 weeks of the season. But they have won 32 consecutive regular season games, and they won their last loss in the regular season was at home against Portsmouth Notre Dame. It was a 35-28 game in week, I believe that is week 10. My bad, it would be 30 straight. No, that's not week 10. I'm losing my mind on this. That was week 8 of that season, so 32 straight wins. on October 7th was their last loss in 2022. So South Point wants to try to change that up a little bit. And then you've got Symmes Valley, who was unbelievable last year. Offensively, defensively, were not very good. They are going to be at Chesapeake to open up their season.
Yeah, Symmes Valley, you look at their schedule. I really like the way it unfolds for them in terms of what they have and the ability to get off to a good start, I guess is the way I would say it. You know, going back to the South Point thing, that's interesting. You know, coming up to Division 5, you know, you play some pretty good schedule throughout, so they're looking at that as an opportunity to play a really good opponent early on that maybe they can match up well with. Those week 1, week 2 matchups, it's always interesting in terms of when you start playing up or down a division.
Yeah, it's look forward to just this game. Really, I've said look forward a ton so far on this, which it shows how excited I am for this upcoming season. See how Chesapeake kind of rebuilds after a tough season last year. It was a 35-0 game last year for Symmes Valley. Was one of 2 shutouts that they had throughout the season. If their defense can be better, they're going to have a chance to make a serious push at Eastern. Last year, they dropped a 40-6 game when they went in at 6-0. So defensively is where they've really got to tighten things up.
Well, in Division 7, I think that's what we find in Southeast is who can stop who. You know, I mean, we laughed about some of the shootouts that we've covered over the last year or two, but it really is unique because, again, what happens, John, is you get roster size and you get how many different athletes are going to play on both sides of the ball at the lower division. And then it comes back to when we're talking Division 3, Division 4, we talked about the ability to have 7, 8 different guys spread out in the tackle column by the end of a Friday night. A lot of times what happens in the smaller school football is you do count on 2 or 3 kids to do a lot of the tackling and the physicality work, and that can lead to some athletes in space, and that can lead to some points on the scoreboard, which we've really started to see. When you think of some of the higher level Division 6 and 7 football that we've covered here on SOSA Overtime, I know we talked about betting the over, joking a little bit, you know what I mean, in terms of on a lot of occasions.
And then our last game that we're going to mention will be Meigs is at Eastern Meigs. Pretty big matchup there. That's a Saturday night game, and that one's going to be at Eastern. Last year was a 23-19 win for Eastern. They go 7-3 on the year. Meigs went 5-5. This has all the makings to be an instant classic on a Saturday night.
Yeah, it's interesting to see on the graduation though. I know Eastern has graduated some kids in some of their boys sports throughout here in the last couple of years. So we'll see what's coming back there. TVC Ohio, TVC hockey crossover matchup there. You know, playing on a Saturday night. You know, they get a really good gate, really good crowd, really good atmosphere. So it's always fun to see those types of week 1 traditions in terms of, you know, probably enrollment-wise, probably not the best of situation for them to play in the same conference. That's where the Ohio hockey divisions work. But it's cool to see them still be able to play competitive, single matchups there in the non-league.
All right, that's. You got anything else on football before we move on?
I like the biggest thing I'll say on football is I think we'll find out more together in the next week or two. That'll start to be able to talk more matchup specific. I think right now on a high school football preview show, it is a little bit more overview. What are some things you're looking to have answered in the first week or two? Non-league schedules are really a huge factor in this. Don't panic when your team starts 0-1 because they scheduled up. Don't overreact the other way when you start 1-0 because you maybe beat a team that's going to be one of the weaker on your schedule.
Right. Let's move over to volleyball now. So in volleyball, this, I really like how you've set up this preview. We're going to talk a little bit, but we're going to start kind of the rotation style. So 6 rotations to help fans get ready for the fall, as that season will start before football starts officially. Let's start with our first rotation, which is more is lost than won. What do you kind of mean on that? Is it just kind of, a team has the ability to, Yes, you don't see a ton of upsets. Is that kind of where you're kind of going on that?
Yeah, I think that we're going to talk a ton of teams, a ton of kids. I thought we'd throw one just volleyball discussion piece in here for people to really gear up and pay attention. In the rally scoring format, really pay attention to how sometimes teams go out and just beat themselves far more than their opponent does. And this is something I've studied in a lot of different sports with coaches over the last couple of years. We talk about in baseball, throwing strikes, making the routine play, basketball, trying to take care of the ball, don't turn it over. A lot of times what happens is your opponent impacts that in other sports, right? Sometimes you fumble the football because of the physicality that the opponent is hitting you with. But just because you turn it over in football doesn't mean there's going to be a scoop and a score. The offense has to still come out, but just because you turn it over in basketball doesn't mean they'll convert offensively on the other end. Same way is like just because you give them an extra out in baseball doesn't mean they'll automatically score. In volleyball, when you make the mistake, it immediately is a point on the other side. And I'm amazed how many times, John, I watch a set going along. It'll be like 12-10, and you'll be like, oh, this team here's playing with them. And all of a sudden you'll look up and it's 19-12, and you'll be like, well, the last 6-7 points, they didn't even do anything. Mm-hmm. They had a missed serve. They had a hitting error. They botched a serve receive. A lot of unforced errors. So I think what happens is, you've heard me use the Adena example over the years on how they serve it like 94% last year, but their ace to error was still 2-1. You know what I mean? Like, that's unbelievable. The efficiency the good teams play with, and I think what happens is know your talent, know your decision making. We say the cliche in sports, stay within yourself. Some people laugh at that, but there really is truth to that, because what is it you're capable of doing? You want to be aggressive, you want to do things, but a lot of times if you want to play with teams a little bit better than you, become a little bit more efficient in what you do, and at least make their talent beat you rather than just handing them. I track some different data that I won't bore people with because I'm a stat nerd, but like the overall finding is there are teams out there that are just below 500 that they're giving away more than a set worth of points per match. They're giving away 25, 30, 35 errors in matches, and I'm telling you, that could be the thing that puts them over the hump and starts to make an average team good, a good team great.
Mm-hmm. Or it can make a average team bad.
Oh, no question. Good point.
Yeah, it's just because when you make poor decisions, it is in every sport. It's not just volleyball, which is what we're talking about now, but it can be in any sport. If you try to do something that, you're not capable of doing, maybe it's a player wants to go up and just absolutely just let rip on one, but they don't get high enough so they don't get on top of the ball, so they're hitting everything long. Yeah. And just, different things, and that's where making smart decisions and knowing your opponent.
And I don't mind the risk reward on the serves. I get that. There's going to be mistakes. I think that sometimes, maybe you didn't get the set you want. Well, let's talk about it after the play. Let's not hit it into the wall because like you said, you're trying to do too much with it. Try to keep the ball in play, keep the ball off the ground a little bit more defensively, be a scrappy group. I'm just amazed how many unforced errors I see and how it can really, really turn some of these sets just like that.
Well, you mentioned setting. Let's go to our second rotation here, setting the pace. We've got some unreal setters in our area. I'll just kind of start with Grayson Clark with Gallia Academy, going to be up there in the state records as far as career sets. What can you tell me about her and some of the other setters in our area?
Well, you knew you weren't going to let me have the right to put things on here and not talk about the setter position. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I love the setter position. I love how it quarterbacks it. You mentioned Clark there. Obviously, the outstanding setter returning there at Miami Trace with Kylie Yeazel, and then Carly Snavely, Allie Thornsley, some kids that can also do it with some swings, but they're going to be involved. But, Witte at Chillicothe, Batson at Unioto, these are all kids that are coming back. Alexander doesn't return a lot, but Laney Douglas was their setter on the TVC Ohio champion. Then there's some that graduated. Like when you look there at North Adams, the Reagan girl. She had a really high total. She flirted up in the high 2000s, almost to the 3,000 mark. But there's a lot of graduation throughout there. Schaefer graduated there at Notre Dame, but there are some that return. You wonder, are they going to go to the 5-1? Are they going to go to the 6-2? Will they bring someone else in? There's a lot of moving parts to that we'll find out together. I know it's not now. Are we allowed to call Logan in our area? We had them down there.
Yeah, they're especially next year.
Lila Kern, she's outstanding. She's as good a player as we have in our entire coverage area. She's really good. Enjoyed watching her down there at the Root. Carmen, South Point. There's again. What did you say at the beginning? We cover how many schools?
73.
Okay, so
it might be 74 now.
There's anywhere from like 70 to 150 setters out there. We're not going to name them all. Okay, so
also Ross County Christian we kind of covered too.
There you go.
So I mean, add to it. Just keep adding.
So my point is, we're not going to get them all, but the setter position. What I would challenge people to watch is the organization that they bring, the entire scheme and the attack. They're going to touch that ball the second time over, and they can help the pass a little bit by coming off and being athletic enough to go get it. They can really help hitters by knowing each hitter, what type of ball do they need. This person needs it a little tighter. This person needs it a little bit off the net. This person's coming at me quick. I always know so-and-so's back there on my weak side. I can go to them at any time. I need to make sure I'm keeping our big time hitter or stud in the back row maybe every now and then. It's an extension of the coach on the floor. It's the quarterback. It's the catcher. It's just so important the way they kind of bring the team together and kind of organize the group.
Okay, so you mentioned, and I'm just looking at your list here real quick, Snavely and Thornsley. Those are two players with some really good length, really good athleticism. Is there an opportunity, if they can find a second setter, to where they can be more of an attacking player as well? Or is that something like, especially with like Circleville, because I know they had some personnel things happen this year, is she going to have to be more involved on the attack?
Well, those are going to be exciting things to think about. Now, with Snavely, you're talking about one of the great players in the entire area, really a top 5 probably player in our entire coverage area. Now, she does have Lydia Gerald. Yeah. She does have Gerald that sets for her, so she will do some hitting, and it's more of a 6-2. Thornsley's shown the ability. Now, we don't have any proof of this. We had some hearsay, maybe was playing through some injury last year and so forth. They had a couple rotations where they got her to the outside and let her swing late in the year, and you're like, wow, you know what I mean? So, you understand why 6-2 might be on the table. But here's the thing, John. When in some of these bigger schools, when you have the height across the board and you don't necessarily need the other hitter, she can impact the game by touching it on that second ball. When she's live in the front row, she can also take that second ball over on a good tight pass to the net. And then what happens is she's tall enough and athletic enough to become a blocker there on that weak side when she's coming across the front row too. So there's so much that goes into it. There's obviously times where the 6-2 is the way to go when you need that girl to hit. But when you do have the 5-1, I do think it gives even more organization to the rotation, and the setter and the hitters really can get on a dynamic wavelength in terms of what they're trying to do, and we see that a little bit for sure in some of these. But when you look at the top of these standings, you have some pretty good setter play, but then you have some question marks where we've had some pretty good setters graduate as well. Yeah,
some outstanding players throughout our area have moved on, but a lot are still back. One of the really talented players to move on in our area was Adena's Katie Burns, but it's just them in the SVC. This will be our third rotation. Adena in the SVC, it feels like it doesn't matter. Like that they graduate outstanding players, but then someone else steps up. They always have someone ready. They have someone in the bullpen. They have someone just ready to go. You had them listed as the Adena Brewers. Is that just kind of because it's that next person up?
Well, I thought you might enjoy a good baseball analogy here through our fall before we say goodbye to baseball for good. Yeah. But for people who follow the Reds, I know John follows the Cubs or whatever, the Milwaukee Brewers have this. Tampa Bay Rays has the same, where they have this kind of reputation of being able to maximize everything, every resource, and it's kind of a well-oiled machine where they just keep rolling it over and over and over. And I think that's what happens with Adena. Every time Adena graduates something, you're like, okay, now Unioto will get him. Now Zane Trace will get him. Maybe they will. I don't know. You know what I mean? But like they have the likes of a Kimmy Dalton back, you know, a Jones there in the middle, Sowers set at Bossert. Lee Master really needs to come on. Pay attention to this. The Katie Burns graduation's obvious. One of the sneakiest graduations in the entire coverage area is J.C. Smith. Smith served as kind of a double libero type player with Dalton back there, and they became they were the best 1-2 passing duo in the entire coverage area, and their defense was phenomenal. Look for teams now, if they can control the ball well enough to do it, look for teams now in their serving and in their attacking to try to get away from Dalton, put pressure on other Lady Warriors to pass the volleyball, to chase down the volleyball, and that to be a big, big factor here. Look for Jones to have the really breakout year. But again, in that SVC, you know, we'll talk about it here, but Unioto was 18-5, 11-3 a year ago. They graduate kind of half of their rotation. They return about half their rotation. They graduated the Poy and Detweiler, White, Patterson, Stanley moved to the Libero there. It looks like Puckett will step in and do that. Batson is the 5-1 setter coming back is really, really good. I would say Charlotte Dennis probably her go-to hitter. Watson returns up front.
They use Grubbs.
Anderson.
Yeah.
Now, Grubbs is the one I wanted to highlight here. Like you're looking for Unioto to have a little bit of a breakout star. I would say Grubbs is the one to pay attention to. On the outside, she has a great setter, someone that she can get really comfortable with. Look for her to provide them a little bit of punch. You know, we had the interviews down there at the Root, and Coach was talking about how all of the offense came from the middle last year. They need to be able to spread it out just a little bit more. I think Grubbs is one that can do that. Anderson's kind of like here's another baseball analogy for our Reds fans. She's kind of like a Spencer Steer. She can kind of play a little bit of everywhere. I think if she got into some of her most comfortable spots, she'd be even better. But for the sake of the team, she kind of fills in and plays wherever it's at. So that'll be something to go. And then Zane Trace is getting a lot of attention. And I'm trying to figure out how much is Carly Snavely, how much of it is the whole roster. Because Snavely's really, really good. But you know, Hill had moved off position last year, and she really had started to come on. I mentioned to you Gerald a second ago. Their ability to just serve, receive, and pass the volleyball is going to be really, really important there. And then I don't know how deep the SVC is. I mean, Dunn at Southeastern, Hosworth at Huntington. I know you've always liked the athleticism more at Piketon. Paint Valley is going to have pretty much a new group. They were pretty old last year. Am I missing someone? Westfall.
No,
Westfall kind of every year, this time of year, they seem to go a little bit under the radar. They're always right there in the middle. They're always good enough. Didn't they get Unioto late last year, right? They're always good enough to get someone. They always have enough holes to where someone seems to sneak up and get them. So we'll see how the middle of the pack goes in there a little bit. But the SVC, maybe not as top heavy. We'll see. Maybe it is.
I think the depth is there for sure as far as the SEC goes. And let's move on to some other leagues where maybe some different some players or some teams have graduated a whole lot. Who's going to be some of the teams to look for? And like we'll start with like a TVC Ohio where Alexander was pretty dominant last year, 21-4, but they graduate a lot.
Perfect example. We just talked about this in football, right? Nelsonville football, Eastern football. We talked about, even like on a bigger scale, Unioto Jackson, what they're doing. Like, what happens is when you have the tradition that say an Alexander volleyball's had, and you go 21-4. The TVC Ohio is not going to feel sorry for you when you graduate, everybody, right? They're wanting to get you. You know, so it's one of those where we just went through it with Adena a little bit. Even if it's not a league champion, maybe it's South Webster. Now, they still have Avery Claxton back, but like that group that just graduated over the last couple of years, man, they went on an incredible run of winning there for quite a few years. Now, there are some that'll reload. Like when you look at a Notre Dame, will that league be deep enough or good enough? I know like Shaw and Willis come back at Portsmouth Clay, but like when you look at the graduation of Ford there at Notre Dame, they still return Bryant and
Purcell.
yeah, I mean they're really good. They're still probably the best. You see what I'm saying? So now make no mistake about it. Alexander, we highlighted Douglas there. Ohms is their libero, so they have setter libero back. They graduated their entire offense. Like so, how are they going to go? Then we'll talk about Gallia Academy later with what they bring. But like Chesapeake, they were 18-6, 11-3. Because you're in Gallia's league, you don't have the championship to show for it. But like, Lowe and Isaacs were really good. So like, how are they going to go? There may not be a better example of a non-conference champion, a champion that not necessarily in terms of winning a conference champion, but winning a lot. Claire King and Logan L. We were talking to Coach Reinauer down there at the Root. 9 seniors, was it? Led by King. And, I think Liggins and Savage come back. I may be missing one. There's not a lot coming back. We were joking with him. I started going through, and now you return her. That I stopped. I'm like, is that it? You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those where the point I'm making in this section is when you establish your program as winners and you start to have some tradition, people don't feel sorry for you. You're going to wear the bullseye because you put the Adena volleyball jersey on. You're going to wear the bullseye because you put the Alexander jersey on. You're going to wear the bullseye, in the division 5, 6, 7, depending on where they fall when you put that South Webster uniform on and you go into the tournament setting. So that's fun for me to watch to see how they can respond to that.
Yeah, these are some really fun teams, some well-coached teams as well. Notre Dame dealing with a lot of different things, but once again, winners. You see kids that go on like Jason Bryant just picks up softball and just goes and is leadoff hitter for the state championship team after not playing for a couple of years. So I mean, it's just you've got winners, and that's what you have to deal with a lot of times with some of these schools. So let's go to, you mentioned the postseason. We've had some teams that have made some big time postseason runs. Eastern Meigs was a team last year that felt like they kind of came, maybe not from out of nowhere, but they made a big time postseason run and were super young. What can you say about like the Eagles and some of the other teams?
I think what happens in these conference matchups is they beat up on each other throughout. Some of them are in the same division, but some of them aren't. You know what I mean? So like what happens is with the extra division now, and I'm going to call it the extra division because we've gone into detail here on SOSA Overtime about how a lot of the divisions were for D1. Really what we have is one extra division. The extra division allows for teams to space out a little bit, not beat up on each other as much. We get more of our best teams into the regional setting and for them to be able to make a run. And you're right, Eastern was one that jumped out at me. You're kind of one that introduced me a little bit to some of those. I know you really enjoyed covering some of the TVC hockey with Racine and Racine shared that time. And Norris is back with Stout and Smith, but like they were probably hit by graduation a little bit more than Eastern. But with Simpson and Well back, Burdett's back at Trimble. So I mean, TVC hockey has some threats, but I would say Eastern's got to have the sky's the limit in terms of expectations. There, you go other small conference and small division volleyball. Remy Moon at Fairfield's got a chance to be a 1,000 kill, 1,000 dig kid.
Unbelievable athlete.
Yeah, great athlete. We know Alyssa Mullins there at Wheelersburg and what they have now. They were hit by graduation a little bit. They're going to have to figure out. They graduate big time setter. Yeah. Hall returns as well. But Alyssa Mullins is like player of the year ago. I've said that for 2 years now, and now we're starting to see the all around game. You're talking about a kid who goes back to service line, can just take over a set from the service line in an instant. Not to mention what she can do across the front row. Here's a team I really, really am high on, John, is Valley. Pay close attention to Valley. Had a chance to see him down at the Root. everything we've heard, it's coming together. They're really, really good at setter. So I didn't mention earlier in the setter because I wanted to save it for here. Caitlin Queen, outstanding 5-1 setter, and she's a taller setter that, again, live in the front row, you got to be aware of it in your scouting report. She doesn't hurt you defensively because of her size at all when it comes to blocking the net. She has Kendall Chrisman, her top target, on the outside. They have a lot of depth throughout. Now, look, we understand the SOC. I just talked about Southwestern and Wheelersburg a little bit. Davis is back at Memphis, Wiseman and Pistol there at West, Gillett and a long I know Waverly graduated their best player, but they returned just about everybody else with Gillett. It's a really good player. But that SOC is a group that's really good. Let me stop there before I go on, because I know you covered a lot of that TVC SOC. What jumps out at you there?
I mean, just that Valley team. It seemed like they were coming on late last year, but they had a really good I know they had a really good tournament at the Root, and we're right on the verge of getting into that. I think it was really close to getting into the championship there, but it just feels like athletically they're very good. But of course, you still got to get past Wheelersburg, and with Wisman and Pistol, West has some really dynamic pieces. Waverly, I think they're kind of on the youngish side, but it seemed like last year those younger players were starting to come along.
They should really, now that they have a full year varsity, I agree with you there. I mean, they graduate a lot of production, but you do have a lot of depth back that I think Coach Henshaw will go with. I also extend out to some of the bigger divisions here with the FAC. I mentioned earlier Lauren Guess at Miami Trace has the outstanding setter back with her, and I mentioned Witte on the setters earlier. Obviously, Hammond at Chillicothe is one of the top 5 players in our coverage area as well. They share the FAC. Davis at Hillsborough is someone that's going to stuff the stat sheet. It's just that's a tough hill to climb there in the FAC when you have those two teams at the top. If I was going to throw a sleeper out there, I don't have their division for volleyball in front of me, but remember how I talked about Chesapeake a second ago, kind of getting lost in the Gallia Academy shuffle? Maybe a South Point would be a team this year. They were 15-7, 11-3 overall. Molly Adams returns there. They're a team. I think I mentioned earlier in their setter, Corman comes back. Their Libero also returns. That's a sleeper group for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I saw them play a little bit on stream last year when they were playing Westfall late in the season, but they've got some really nice pieces. And, if you're going to be competitive in that league, you've got to be able to elevate your game because of how good this next team that we're going to talk about is. Just an unreal team last year. Unbeaten regular season. They don't graduate any seniors, does Gallia Academy. And they add in another player as well. And what can you say about this Gallia Academy team?
Just really, really good, really exciting. They're an easy group to root for. They're kind of infectious in their personality. I see a hunger in their community. I see a hunger in their athletic department. I see a hunger in just the way they go about the event. Like we've said it on record. Like when we go down there, it's fun. I mean, we're not in the rooting business, right? But it's fun. It's one of those things where it's an easy group to feel good for when they have success like they did, led by an outstanding setter in Grayson Clark, and then she has so many different options. If you go back a couple years ago when they first started to come on the scene, obviously Aubrey Fraser and Abby Clark, great size at the net. They could really swing away and hammer. And then they I've always given them a lot of credit in their leadership because they've kind of said, hey, we'll give up some stats. We'll give up some swings to bring in some of these young kids with us because we want to win. We want to go to another level, and they really have. Obviously Aspen Barnes and Riley Saunders. You mentioned Piper Pugh. Lauren Eachus has played a role there. One ball to go around. Like in any sport, it's kind of like a basketball team that maybe doesn't have the 1,000-point score, but they have like 4 or 5 that are going to score 900. But they do it. They all accept it because they want to win. And I laughed here when I was trying to think of my title.
I thought you'd appreciate this. I said, Gallia Academy, they're kind of ready to buy oceanfront property at the top. You know, sometimes you show up and you have a good group come through. You know what I mean? And like you might rent some property or you might go on a little vacation. I think it's safe to say Gallia Academy is about ready to go ahead and just put a big down payment down on like, hey, we're going to be here a while.
Yeah.
Because obviously they didn't graduate anyone off the undefeated group last year. They are going to graduate some this year, but you can already kind of see how it's going to roll over. I had a chance to see a little bit of their depth down there at the Root. There's kids, you know, when you talk about waiting your turn, there's some kids on that JV group that are probably looking around the Root that day thinking, I could play for that. But it's one of those things you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And they just have some really cool things going on. They have the back row play to go with it as well, with Bennett and then Petro and Rice and I'm sure I'm missing some that give us some dynamic serving and so forth. But yeah, the Piper Pew is drawing a lot of attention for the basketball and volleyball, rightfully so. But this is a group up and down the line that is going to be fun to watch and tough to beat.
Yeah, it's just they're loaded, and it feels like they're moving the pieces in the right way, and they've bought into, hey, you know, I might just be a decoy on this side because we've got a big hitter on the backside, and it's because eventually it's coming back to me because you've got the point guard, you've got the setter, and Clark that can kind of pick your poison on where they want to attack, and it feels like they've bought into it doesn't matter if I'm going to get mine because we're going to get ours as a team.
Yeah.
And that's what, to me, is the most exciting thing about their team.
That's a great point, John, because for them, it kind of goes back to my first rotation. We go full circle here as we rotate all the way around, is they can't be afraid to be great. They can't be afraid to be aggressive. But then I talk out both sides of my mouth because they also have to be efficient. They're going to be the better team on the court most nights to where they can't go out and beat themselves either. But with that being said, for them to go to the level they want to go to, they've got to be able to play with pace. They got to be able to play with some aggressiveness. They got to know that in the risk-reward categories that their risk is going to be worth it most nights because their talent's going to be able to do it at a high level. And it'd be anxious to see. I mean, look, their conference has a couple pieces to it. I noticed in the non-leagues where they've really picked it up a little bit. They had the undefeated season. I think this time they've got their eyes a little bit more on an end prize. So let's see how they respond to some of the non-league matchups that they put on the schedule here this year.
Yeah, I love what they've done and challenging themselves in the non-league, trying to make it better and better throughout the season. So, you know, we've gone 6 rotations, but this is something that kind of came onto the game. Hey, not like super recent. It's been 20 years,
Yeah,
but the Libero, I'm just gonna throw out there. I did announce a kid during Legion baseball as the Libero because he had a different jersey on than the rest of his team for some reason. And then like 3 at bats in, he was back to playing a normal position because he had the other jersey. So, but that's one of the things I enjoy doing on that. But with the Libero position, what can you kind of tell us about the Libero position, especially for people that don't fully understand the value and the importance of it?
It was really unique. We've credited volleyball a bunch here on SOSA over time for being one of the more dynamic rule changes over the last generation or so, and it's taken their game to another level because I think what it's done is it's allowed athletes to be a little bit more specialized within the game. You have your all-around talents, but then you have kids, if you're 6'2" and you can't pass because you don't move as well, okay, well, we have a role for you. If you're 5'1" and you can't hit, well, we got a role for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where if you're not familiar, basically the person's passing for 2 different people. So, they're able to stay in the game longer across the back row. They can only serve once, so that's why you see them come out. So, we have some really good ones. I just mentioned Benedict Gallia. Kimmy Dalton at Adena is probably as good as any in our area. I mentioned Copley there for South Point. South Point had some pieces coming back. I like her as well. Ackley at Miami Trace, Carver at Portsmouth West. I assume Ramsey at Waverly will still be the Libero. I've not seen them play in person. They were down at the Root, but I missed them that day. I didn't get to see them. I mentioned Ohms at Alexander. In the TVC High, Laudermelt from Pomeroy Meigs. I mentioned earlier in our coverage, Puckett at Unioto looks like she's going to step into Stanley's role. Rush at Notre Dame. So I guess again, when we cover 70-some schools, there's 70-some liberos. I'm going to miss some, but I'll try to highlight. But I will say this, John, in studying the libero position in prep for the show, that's probably the position that was hit harder by graduation across the area. And you'll hear coaches say all the time, you got to win the serve, win the serve, receive. If you don't pass, it starts with a pass. And again, I think that's where the setter can help a little bit, being able to come off the net and still get to it and get it up to the hitter and there be a trust. Nothing that drives me nuts more than to watch a hitter come off the net thinking she's got to go help on the second ball. Let the setter go get it, get ready to hit. But that will be something to watch. The depth of the libero position could get challenged a little bit. I don't have the name in front of me. I don't know why it just hit me. There was a young girl that passed for Valley last year, and I apologize to her. She'd be a sophomore now. She's got a chance to be really good too. I cannot think of her name. That's terrible on my part. But the point I wanted to make is, look for teams to challenge other people, okay? I always joke that she's wearing the other collar jersey. So like when they're in serve receive, do you have the skill set? It goes back to the risk reward we talked about a little bit, but do you have the ability to attack a little bit more? Now, if your ball handling is clean enough too, do you also have the ability to maybe even in your attack to go away from the libero a little bit, maybe attack the setter in the defensive position? But that's something to really watch, is the depth of passing, okay? Because that is going to be something that I think is going to get challenged, is the depth. Remember I talked about J.C. Smith and Adena? I think the second and third passers are going to be huge factors in some of these teams as they develop.
It's McGraw.
Thank you. Yes. I wanted to highlight that because, again, we know how good Valley is going to be this year. That's going to be a big reason why.
Yeah, and it's, the serve receive is so important because, as you said, it makes it to where everyone can do their job. Like, just do your job as long as that serve receive is that excellent first pass, and then you've got your hitters that can go be set up wherever, and then your setter just kind of picks their poison.
That's it. Yeah, and it is. It all does work together, and the pass, the set, and the hit, and when the pass isn't as good, you need a really good setter. And when the setter, doesn't put the best thing out there, you need some hitters that are kind of unique ability to hit the bad ball. Sometimes kind of like a baseball player, right? Hit the bad ball. Sometimes you need your hitters to be able to hit the bad ball as well, and that's what separates some of those really unique athletes.
Do you got anything else on volleyball?
Man, that's awesome. So excited. Can't wait to get after it. We'll hope to have some of our schedule out here soon. We're going to start to look at some schedules. We are waiting to hear on a huge event that we thought was going to happen. I don't know is going to, but I think those teams are going to still play. So Carson and I, John and I, Dewey and I are all working together to see what we might be able to put together throughout the year. But obviously our volleyball coverage will be second to none.
Yep, and really looking forward to that. So let's move on to our last area of our kind of preseason coverage here of soccer.
Yeah, let me jump out into we'll switch roles here a little bit, because obviously John is our soccer analyst and does a good job with his analysis. When we look here, I think you had given me some good topics, and I wanted to start here with you. We always say defense wins championships in all sports, and I think there's some truth to that. And offense is fun, scoring's fun, and everything. But when it comes down to it, you've taught me a lot about soccer. As I watched the World Cup and tried to improve my knowledge of the game and so forth. As good as those goal scorers are, it still came down to the ability to stop the other team from scoring. Talk to us defensively here.
So I'll start with Wheelersburg. Wheelersburg had the best player in Ohio in Division IV last year, Nick Sylvia. He scored 171 career goals, third all-time in the state. But the year before, they also had Nick Sylvia, and they played Riverview in the regional final. They lose 4-2 in that game. Give up 4 goals. Riverview goes on to win the state championship. Something that was very on the table there for Wheelersburg. So what does Wheelersburg do? They just, they have one of the seniors that didn't play as a junior come back. You have Braden Bird, who was an All-Ohio goalie. I mean, just one of the all-time elite. I believe he may have the state record for career shutouts, but I know he has the Wheelersburg record for career shutouts and the Southeast District record for career shutouts. But they started 4 seniors on the back line. You also had Evan Mitchell, who's another All-Ohioan in the midfield. So the whole thing kind of works out. But they started 4 seniors on defense. They were unbelievable defensively. They played Riverview last year in the regional finals. Same game. They score 2 goals. Riverview scores none. So the difference in one year to another was one year Riverview scores 4. The next year they don't score any, and because of that, Wheelersburg makes it to the Final Four. The defense can make a huge difference in these games because you just let your offensive players just do their thing. They're probably going to score 1 or 2 goals, and because of you have an elite defense, it gives you a chance to stay in a game where maybe your offense might be limited to 1 goal in those games, and that's ultimately what makes a team like a Minford 2 years ago get to the finals. It was because of their elite defense. Makes an Alexander last year make their deepest run on the girls' side. They get to the Elite 8. They do have Lily Ryder still back from a season ago. They had 21 games last year, 13 shutouts. They only allowed 18 total goals, that Alexander team. They graduate a lot, but with Lily Ryder, they've got an outstanding defense back. And then 2 of the teams that I'm really looking forward to on the boys' side, South Webster, who graduated a whole lot, but they've got Cole Bennett, Braden Bernard back on the defense, very solid defensively. So they're going to have to replace a lot of key pieces in the midfield and forward, but it starts with that defense. And then Lucasville Valley, who I think has a chance to be the best team in our entire coverage area. Wow. Nick Queen, last year as a junior, was one of their captains. You graduate Christian Coppin. You have some really nice pieces coming back. And it starts with the defense. It starts with Queen in the defense.
Are those programs what we've been talking about all day in terms of ready or not? Here's the bullseye. Like
yes.
You talk about the South Webster kids that graduate. I enjoyed having coach in here on the baseball side the other day. Is that a little bit of what they're going to do? Your Wheelersburg when you graduated legend like that. When you South Webster and Minford went through it a little bit on the boys and girls side.
Yeah, it's for like a Valley, it's been a long time since Valley's broke through. They were the first team to ever make it to the Final Four in the Southeast District, but that was in the 90s. It's not the 90s anymore. It's been almost 30 years since that happened, and they've gotten on the verge. They get to the district finals every couple years, but I think this team is athletically strong enough, athletically gifted enough. Now they have to replace that one really big piece that can kind of make their team go. But if they can figure it out in the midfield, this is a team that's going to be outstanding. They're in the smaller of the SOCs. The SOC 2, which would be Southwest.
No, soccer just doing 2?
Yes. Okay. With Wheelersburg, Minford, South Webster, Waverly, West. It's a side where I believe Northwest is in that as well. It's a side where if you can slow teams down defensively, you're going to have a chance at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, more times than not, it's been Wheelersburg. But the team that's dealing with Wheelersburg at the end of the year is typically one that's getting to the regional level like Southwestern has done the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Now, I guess I wanted to carry defense over
to goalkeeping. And I want you to be able to talk about some elite goalkeepers here. But I had a question for you first, that when you were talking about defense, it just made sense to go here next. In basketball, you hear about ball pressure because you have someone cleaning up, as a shot blocker. And in baseball, you can protect a corner outfielder when you're elite in center field, or, and there's a lot of analogies throughout sports in general. Just how much does the goalkeeper matter? I understand a lot of times when you have great, numbers in terms of so many goals allowed, that the defense out in front of them is playing the ball. Talk to us educate us on soccer there a little bit in terms of how much does the actual goalkeeper play the difference maker role in becoming a great defense.
So I don't want to go too deep into the USA-Belgium game because it was awful. But you saw the difference in the goalkeepers there, because with Belgium, they had a really experienced goalkeeper that kind of guided everybody. Now they were much better ball control, but he's kind of setting up their team, showing them where, communicating and everything. And then for USA, as they're making a run, their goalie tries to do the same thing, but just wasn't able to do it. Ends up having one of the biggest mistakes in World Cup history. And, obviously things did not go well from there. But for the goalkeeper, they're seeing the entire field, so they can communicate with everybody. If they can handle the ball, that's a great thing. Obviously with their feet is what I mean there. But the ability to be a leader back there, which is one of the players that I wanted to talk about, was Eastern Brown's Chase Pinkerton. He's a point guard. We see them with the 2-point guards in basketball, and Pinkerton's one of those kids that he's got those leadership qualities of a point guard, and he does it as he's someone who's seen the entire field. He's seen the whole field. He's able to set up his defense, communicate with them where attackers are coming at, and then he's able to kind of set up the offense. And I think that's such a key part. And for me, when I played, was knowing that there was a goalie I could trust behind me makes it to where you don't play as tight defensively. I think that was the thing with Wheelersburg last year. They could take some chances because they knew behind them they had a guy that was going to help clean it up in case something.
So probably what I learned from that, and tell me if I'm wrong, is the characteristic of the goalie that probably doesn't get talked about enough for the casual fan is the verbal leadership and communication.
Yeah, it's you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to, lead your team in that way. And maybe it's somebody that doesn't even see the ball very often because they're not typically involved in the attack. If they get an assist, it's usually one a year, and it's off of some crazy play that's happened. You don't see them unless there's a lot of saves, and then the saves, whatever on that, because that could be anything. But it's really important for them to be able to communicate and to build their team up from the back. And then if you can counterattack, it just makes you a really dynamic team. But it also, when you graduate a lot and you have a key piece back, like for Jackson with Tanner Jenkins back as a goalkeeper, they had their best season ever last season for Jackson. But you have someone that played through that, has that experience, you can kind of help rebuild your team from that goalkeeper forward, where they still have some nice pieces coming back, but their biggest piece is that goalkeeper, and it can help you as a coach. It can also make it to where you feel really confident in what you have back there.
Yeah, that's good stuff, and I think that's really good. A good visual to understand the way the game looks from that perspective, looking out. You mentioned a couple really good ones. Anyone else you want to highlight there, kid-wise?
In reality, it's just, Jillian Matthey from Unioto is another one that does a really good job. Great leader back there. We saw that a little bit in basketball as well. It's just the communication piece. Is if you can communicate it, you're going to give yourself a better team or better chance overall. And I think that's what's going to make some of these teams really dynamic. McClain girls is going to be one that's a huge spot to replace because they had a really dynamic goalie last year. Alexander, another one. How can these teams replace that goalkeeper where, like North Adams boys, they make it to the Elite Eight last year. They have that back and Thad Moore, and you've got really good pieces to build off of. and how do they fill in that new role as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. That'll be something. We talked about once you have a chance to get out and do a couple weeks of coverage, you'll be able to really start to put that piece together. And we'll circle back to that. We'll make note of that and talk about that a lot, because that's a fascinating way you're selling that in terms of, I don't think I'd given the goalie enough credit whenever I used the point guard, the catcher, the setter. I don't think I ever included the goalie in there enough. So I appreciate you sharing that there. Well, let's move over to offense. I mean, we talked enough about defense. Offense is fun, Coach. Come on, let me score. So it's one of those, you got to score to win. Tell us who's going to score.
Yeah, there's some really, really, really talented players. Let's start on the boys' side. Unioto's Elliot Alsop.
Yeah.
And it feels like from some of the news I've heard, sounds like he's going to have to step it up and score even more. Last year was an All-Ohioan as a sophomore. He was the first player ever for Unioto to be an All-Ohioan as a sophomore.
That's saying something.
Yeah,
That's
and
good
it's 30 goals, 15 assists last year as a sophomore. They've got some really nice pieces coming back, and he's kind of the head of it. It feels like when Unioto's really good, they have a really good class, and then 2 years behind them is a really good class coming. That's what they have now. So they've got a really good junior class, some really solid seniors. They got to the Sweet 16 last year, and Wheelersburg scored twice in the last 10 minutes to beat them 4-2. An outstanding game over there at Chillicothe. It might have been the coldest I've ever been covering a sporting event. But they've got some really good pieces back, a really nice goalkeeper for Unioto. But what really makes them go is Elliot Alsop. They've got some really talented freshmen coming up. So he's going to have to kind of carry them along for the next couple of years, trying to build up to make a big-time breakthrough to try to do what Wheelersburg did last year in that Division 4. This is a really exciting group for Unioto. For Chesapeake is one that you don't really think about much in soccer, but Aiden Parrott is a player who's on the verge of breaking through to 100 career goals. He's going to have a really nice year again this year, but was one of the best goal scorers last year in the area. Really exciting player for the Panthers. They had one of their best seasons ever last year. Looks like they're going to have a similar season this year, maybe even better. And then if you go to Northwest, Luke Lewis is just a machine. Scores a ton, scored over 40 goals last year as a junior. This is a Northwest team that the last few years they've really bought into the soccer side while also elevating their football program as well. So it's not just been sometimes at a school, a smaller school, you kind of have to kind of give and take a little bit. For a long time, if we look at Unioto for a long time was a lot of soccer's really good.
Yeah.
They play that on Fridays, but soccer's good. And now that football is really good at Unioto, soccer has still kind of gone into that direction. And for Northwest, it feels like they're going in that same direction of, hey, football's turned it around. Let's keep soccer going in that way.
That's interesting, because when you get in that Division 3 or 4, that makes sense to me. You start getting into the 5 and 6 at the schools that try to do both.
It can,
that's tricky.
Yeah, it can be really difficult, and I think that's where, a kid like Luke Lewis, and the Lewis family could just kind of elevate a program like they have with Northwest, and they've been a really solid program for the last few years, and the Lewises are a big part of that, and Luke Lewis is unbelievable. Now, if we look at the girls' side, Vivian Henninger for Fairfield is one of the best overall athletes in our area. Strong, talented, and really fast. Just can kind of do a little bit of everything. She had 31 goals last year, 7 assists. She's dealt with some injuries early on in her career, but last year she made a huge impact. She really helped break that Lynchburg Clay 100-plus game win streak or unbeaten streak in conference play. She was a big part of that last year. And I think for Fairfield to do kind of what they're hoping to do this year, she's going to have to be a big part of that. Fairfield Union is another program that's always really talented. Maddie Mitchell's a big part of that as well. So look forward to seeing them throughout this year. But then the one I want to mention is Kylie Mercurio from Westfall. She had 37 goals last year in 13 matches. They were 13-0. Then she gets hurt. They did not win another match after that. Like, it was just, she was unbelievable and so dynamic, averaging nearly 3 goals, almost a hat trick a night. And she's so athletic, so fast. If she's back and healthy and 100%, that's going to make this a Westfall team to really keep an eye out on. So keep an eye out on her as well.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable stat.
Yeah.
Hopefully, good health, to Williamsport area there, that where she can get back and have a big year. When you were talking there, the last thing I have, and then you can go wherever you want to end it. The analogy of basketball to soccer, I think, something that really has helped me, and I think could help a lot of our viewers that are trying to get more into soccer and follow these kids and do things. And I know here on SOSA we're looking to increase our soccer coverage. What analogy could you give to our viewer in terms of some of the similarities that you see in terms of the spacing, the skill set, and kind of the teamwork dynamic in basketball to soccer?
Well, you have if we look at basketball, sometimes you have your overall score. You just have your go-to person. You need a basket, you're going to go to them. So that's where, like, if we're using Wheelersburg last year, even though Nick Sylvia was an outstanding overall player, still the go-to guy.
Sure.
And that's where I put them in kind of this all-around category. But then you also have, like, an Evan Mitchell, where he could do a little bit of everything. North Adams last year, they make it to the Elite Eight. And they were a team that they had a ton of seniors, but it was also a ton of seniors that could really do a lot of different things. They were, because of that, it wasn't a team that, maybe they were so reliant on one player. Like, they had a Jaden Reckers last year who, had 15 goals, 23 assists. He scored their game winner in the district semifinal in overtime to beat Minford. They make the regional final for the first time because he did such a good job of finding different players. So he was kind of a point guard, but at the same time, he was a kid who could go out and could do it at the same time. They lose an All-Ohioan, and it's, they were a team that, Bo Hessler was an All-Ohioan because he was a type of guy who could do everything for them. He had 16 assists, but he also could put up.
Well, you mentioned Maddie Mitchell had 14 assists. That means someone else is scoring too. You know what I mean? Like there's a sharing of the ball there, but then it's one thing when you share the ball for them to be able to convert. Obviously, that there's somebody else there getting the ball into the net.
Yeah, and it's if you look at McClain. McClain had their best season ever. Paisley,
a lot of basketball players.
Yeah, a lot of basketball players. You hear Paisley Pryor, Lara Henson, two big-time players for them, but they also would step up in different times and do different things for their team. Henson scores a big goal in their game against Alexander. They lose in the Sweet 16, but they can just kind of step in and do a little bit of everything. If they have to help defensively, they can help defensively. So it's kind of in that midfield role in a way. A couple of different players. Fayetteville, new to our coverage, not new to our coverage area, but new to the Southeast District. Aubrey Barber, 18 goals, 10 assists last year. They went 25, 8, and 4 over the last 2 seasons. Have the Rockets. So
now I know they're incredible in basketball too. Or some of those same kids.
A lot of the same kids. So you mentioned Christina Murphy she's a basketball player that was in volleyball, but Barber is one of those really talented kids in basketball as well. So. Then if you look at Marietta is just one of the best programs on the boys and girls side. Grace Spencer, 26 goals, 14 assists last year. They made it to the regional final last year. It's just an outstanding program. Peebles, Connor Gross on the boys side, 25 goals, 11 assists. One of the best all-around players in not just the Southeast District, but the Shack as well. But then Ashton Reeder from Minford is one of those players that I feel like does a little bit of everything. They dealt with a lot of injuries last year. He dealt with some injuries last year as well. He was a starting midfielder in the state championship game as a sophomore. Started on the Final Four team in basketball that same year as a sophomore. Just a winner. And just he can score when he need it. He can, find the right man. They've got a ton of young talent. This Minford, they're one of the teams I'm really excited about this year. I think that whole SOC is unbelievable. And Ashton Reeder is one of those players that as he goes, Minford goes, and he's got a chance to make them go a really long way once again.
Well, I know in talking to you off the air that you're just, I got the sense you're really high on the depth of that SOC and a lot of good soccer being played down there. And then I hear the same thing in your voice about the Shack. I mean, when you talk about the North Adams group, that, and what they accomplished, and
that's without even mentioning Lynchburg on either side.
I was going to say, I'm glad you said that, because once upon a time, you gave the impression that it was a little bit top heavy because of that, where now, because of, I don't know if it's because of their greatness or the standard they set, everyone else is pushing to catch up, and they're coming, and it's making for a better conference of soccer.
Yes, 100%. And that's like Saturday, which this is coming out on Monday, so it would have already came out. But we got Minford at Lucasville Valley or Lynchburg in boys and girls on Saturday. Just really looking forward to getting out and seeing those programs. And when you talk to those coaches, you can tell why those programs are in the positions that they're in each year, and that's why the Shack overall has elevated. That's why one of the reasons why the SOC is elevated. The SOC is kind of, they've had to elevate. They've had to elevate because it's kind of, if you don't elevate, then you're getting left way behind. For the Shack, Lynchburg, it felt like had kind of a head start, and then everyone else started to catch up, and they still are doing what they can to stay in front because of what they've always done.
No, I love the basketball analogy when you went to your all-around section there, because I do see that a lot of, when I see some of these kids, like with the records there on your notes, 23 assists, that tells me it's kind of like when you're playing with a great point guard, you'll run the floor because he or she's going to reward you. Same way in soccer there. Like, I'll get out and go because I know he's going to find me, and we can go from there.
Yeah, should be a really fun season in soccer. Really looking forward to getting out there this weekend and seeing some games, and then I know we're looking to broadcast a couple moving on as well.
Okay. Well, final thought here. Fall sports underway. Final thought is what?
We planned on not going very long, and we still went over 2 hours.
Yeah, but
no, that's kind of what we do. It's just kind of when we start talking, it's like I was like, oh, this will be like an hour and 15 minutes in my head. And I'm like, we get to 2 hours, and we kind of hurried through parts of it. I'm really looking forward to doing this each and every week to talk more and more kids, and I'm excited to see the young kids that we don't know about yet. Those are the ones like Wheelersburg had a young kid that missed last year. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see how their growth in soccer is. I'm excited to see kind of just Wheelersburg in every sport because they had such a talented senior class. Now we're going to see that next man up. We're going to see why they are what they typically are. And I'm excited to see these kids, when they get their chance on the varsity level, make the most of it.
Yeah, and we haven't even got into, throughout the year we'll try to mention a little bit of golf here or there, some cross country here. We even got into that, and that's what makes it fun in the fall. Is there's so much. You and I have never really got wrapped up in the how long is the show. That's why the timestamps you've always talked about are so good. But again, we won't get to every single sport every single week, but we'll try to spread the wealth and we've always had good football coverage. I think you and I are equally excited about the volleyball and soccer coverage that we can bring as well. So pretty good stop weekly here on SOSA Overtime for your fall coverage.
Yeah, it should be really fun, and we appreciate Perfection One for making that possible for us. Once again this year, this is their third year of being with us for Overtime, and we appreciate each and every one of those years. So, Shayne, you got anything else?
That'll do. Can't wait to get started. Looking forward to covering it.
Yeah, so this week, for sure, Thursday, Jackson at Unioto football. That will be a live stream. Friday will be Logan Elm at Zane Trace, our Kingston National Bank game of the week. Maybe somewhere Saturday for volleyball, we'll kind of see. But after that, we'll be back in here to talk next Sunday. That episode will go out next Monday. Looking forward to talking about everything that happens in week one of football and week one of volleyball, soccer, golf, cross country, everything. Although golf's already a couple weeks into it.
And if we're missing something, which we know we are, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd love to have some interaction with our with our fans out there and so forth. So let us know so we can take a look at it, make sure we're talking about it here on SOSA Overtime.
And try not to like act like we're idiots on the letting us know. Just kind of let us know. As we said, we're covering.
Well, I always
70
say
plus.
I
know I'm
you're
an
going to
idiot.
call me an idiot, you got to get in line behind my wife.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. So, but like we know we're missing stuff. Like it's not that big of a deal. But like, hey, just be kind of cool about it. You know, it happens. Hey, we don't want to. We'll make up for it. But yeah. So, Shayne, all you got?
That's
all right.
it.
For Shayne Combs, I'm John Bruce. You've been watching SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Have a great rest of your week.